first sentence I have to say is I'm not out to ban vaccines. I believe in the concept of eradicating infectious diseases. Sure. Right now, the one-size-fits-all for everybody, not working. A vaccination is a medical procedure that should have questions prior to getting a vaccination, such as, is your child currently ill? Is your child currently taking antibiotics? Does your family have a history of autoimmune disease? Is your child allergic to eggs, MMR, cultured in an egg medium? None of these questions are ever asked. A 5-pound preemie gets the same vaccination as a 10-pound full-termer. They need to be individualized.
And explain why you feel this way and why you decided not to vaccinate your youngest children.
So I have 3 children. My oldest, was kind of the sacrificial lamb. He was vaccinated and had a huge amount of thimerosal, a huge amount of mercury. And after he had the MMR and the chickenpox vaccination on the same day, we never saw him again for 3 years.
Never saw him again, meaning
he developed autism. He lost language, he lost social skills, he lost bowel control, he became very sick within hours of vaccination. So I held his hand over the proverbial fire. He got burned. Don't ask me to line up my other 2 children to get burned again. What kind of parent would I be?
And that's really the discussion we want to focus on here, is the requirement that you have to vaccinate your children in certain states. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, vaccinations are required.
Right. Some of the other states will have religious exemptions, not just personal exemptions, but yeah, some states you're stuck. You can't go to public schools. You may have to. A lot of parents have to homeschool, and that in itself creates a pocket.
Like, what if I have a familial history to a negative response to vaccination? I'm literally supposed to vaccinate or educate. Like, I have to choose education or vaccination. Should I be mandated by the government?
I will say no, you shouldn't, because I do have a few families in my practice that have some sort of familial tendency towards reactions to certain vaccines, the live vaccines, and they're in studies in a place like UCLA. But that's not all families, just a few families. That's why I'm against mandatory vaccines. I think somebody should have the right to say no. Here's the thing: there's a lot of studies out there. Some of them show zero. And let's just talk about autism first. Some of them show no link, and some of them show a possible link. Me as a physician, I stayed with an open mind when the autism vaccine debate first came online, and I had a lot of parents scared and asking me questions, and I kind of went along with it. But over the last several years, the data has shown, okay, it probably isn't just the vaccines. What is it? We still don't know.
I believe there's other environmental triggers.
Many kids get these illnesses without getting vaccinated.
But what a great study. If Offit and Gerberding and a bunch of other people would go, let's study the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated. No one is doing that study. That study needs to be done.
I do agree with you in terms of the one size does not fit all.
One size fits all doesn't work in medicine in general.
Right. Exactly. So why are we doing that with vaccines?
Everyone wants doctors to have all the answers, but you can't have all the answers when there's an emerging new problem. And this new illness that's on the rise, something like autism, where there's absolutely no evidence that it's from vaccines.
I would love to protect my child from infectious diseases. I would love to walk into your office and feel completely confident, yes, I'd like this shot, this shot, this shot, and my child's going to be fine. The fact is, I walked in, he got shots, and he didn't speak to me for 3 years.
Dr. Altman, I'm curious of your thoughts, because I have to tell you, I tend to agree with Dr. Sears that, hey, if you're a mom and you're educated and you don't want your kids to be vaccinated, you should have that choice if you're making an informed decision, in my opinion.
The problem is that these diseases are still out there. And when we have pockets of kids that aren't immunized, or infants that are too young to be immunized, or immunocompromised children that can't be immunized, these diseases spread very quickly, and we see a lot of children dying.
And you don't want your kids to be vaccinated, you should have that choice if you're making an informed decision, in my opinion.
The problem is that these diseases are still out there. And when we have pockets of kids that aren't immunized, or infants that are too young to be immunized, or immunocompromised children that can't be immunized, these diseases spread very quickly, and we see a lot of children dying. 2 things that I do want to point out, because I do find that moms, when they come to my office, they don't understand this, is that vaccines are always changing and being improved thanks to vaccine technology. The vaccines we give today are very different from the vaccines that we gave 30 years ago. And you explained how vaccines work. There's those little immunologic particles in them, or immunogenic particles. And all the vaccines together today have less of those than one vaccine did 30 years ago. So that's something that parents don't understand.
You'll forgive me if I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry. I'm sorry. Their bottom line is the dollar. My bottom line is my child. I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry.
Let me say this. I will guarantee you, Dr. Altman and Dr. Sears' bottom line is saving child's lives. I will guarantee you that they have
Then
nothing.
fall all over yourselves to make vaccines safer, and I will be the first one at your door to sign my kid up for inoculation.
I totally agree with you. I think vaccines have gotten safer, like you said. You know, even the vaccine that harmed your child, that's been improved, Barbara.
Like any other drug, they carry a risk that's greater for some than others. Informed consent has been the central ethical principle in the practice of modern medicine. Vaccines should be not separated out from the informed consent ethic. And I think it's a human right to be able to decide what you are willing to risk your life for or your child's life for.
I think it's so important. I sit down with parents, if they're being vaccinated or not. Parents want to know. They want to be informed. And they want to know, what are my risks for catching an illness? What are my risks for being harmed by a vaccine? And between 1991 and 01, out of 1.9 billion doses of vaccines given, there was 18,000 adverse, bad outcomes. 1 in 5,500 doses of vaccines will cause a problem. That sounds pretty bad, but now what are the kids' risks at catching one of these illnesses? 85,000 kids a year will catch some sort of vaccine-preventable illness. Out of 50 million kids, that comes to about 1 in 600 kids a year will catch some sort of vaccine-preventable illness, and that's each year.
But doctor, we still need to go back to this question, this big question. As we have suppressed so many infectious diseases in childhood, we have seen this corresponding rise in chronic disease and disability. And I think it's a fair question for parents to ask. And scientists and doctors in the federal health agencies have got to answer this for us. Have we traded something?
Let me say one last thing. The life expectancy in this country is longer than it's ever been, and it's because of things like vaccinations. Now, you have your fears, and I understand that, but the reason you do is because you have had a terrible tragedy in your life. But there are a lot of people still alive today because of vaccinations, and we need to recognize that. And whatever side you take, we can all agree we are after the same goal. We want to keep our kids healthy. The bottom line is talk to your doctors, make an informed decision. The overwhelming majority of pediatricians in this country strongly support vaccinations.
And a lot of people are catching on. A third of the nurses in Britain said they won't take the vaccine. More and more people are concerned about this. And we haven't even covered some of the major things like the contamination with cancer-causing viruses, unknown viruses, neurotropic cell viruses. All of this is talked about in the closed meeting among virologists, but the general public has no clue as to the occurrence of all of this.
Now let's cross stateside, and the US has started to test a swine flu vaccine on children and adults. The US Department of Health and Human Services hopes to vaccinate at least 160 million people by December. Well, for more on this, let's cross to our correspondent Priya Sridhar, who's in our Washington studio for us. Hello to you, Priya. So what are the hopes for this new vaccine?
Thanks. Well, the swine flu vaccine has raised concerns with people across the world. A new survey shows that 1/3 of British nurses have said that they will not take the swine flu vaccine because they're worried about the possible side effects. Now, the swine flu vaccine from back in the 1970s, which is supposed to be pretty similar to the one that's being offered today, has been linked to a neurological disorder called the Guillain-Barré syndrome. And joining me to discuss all of this is RT contributor and investigative journalist Wayne Madsen. Wayne, thanks so much for joining me. First of all, can you tell me who has taken the swine flu vaccine so far, and what have you heard about it?
Well, apparently there has been a test community used already. We're also hearing that the vaccine that's being developed, they're saying it's not for everyone. Apparently children were used as, for lack of a better term, guinea pigs in Oklahoma. I know from talking to people in the research community, even scientists who helped develop the vaccine for smallpox are saying they're not going to take the vaccine and urging their friends and family not to take this vaccine either.
What kind of side effects did these children have, if any?
Well, contained in the vaccine is a component called thimerosal, which has been proven, half of it is composed of mercury, and it's been proven to cause not only Guillain-Barré syndrome, but also autism in young children. There's been several court cases because of past vaccinations due to the autism issue.
And so how will the swine flu vaccine be offered? Will it be mandatory for people? What have you heard about that?